Welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. I'm your host, Joey, and today I'm joined by Thomas Emerson. Thomas owns and operates a gym called Praxis, which is in Canberra. That's south of Sydney, where I am for the overseas listeners. And we share a lot of similar values. It's a very movement-focused gym, and I haven't actually had the pleasure of setting foot in there myself. However, we've had a lot of crossover with coaches and members in the past. Today, I sit down with Thomas and we talk about his movement journey, going from team sports through to becoming a dedicated movement practitioner, but then also his transition from being someone that's interested in movement to being someone that's now running a business around it. And we dived really deep into how he's built his business and what that's been like and some of the unique struggles that he's faced along the way. Really cool chat. If you're in the movement game or if you're in the gym game or considering being so, you will take a lot from it. I hope you enjoy today's chat with Thomas Emerson.
How you going, Joey?
Brother, I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. You hear me all right?
Yeah, you're coming through real nice basal tones on that mic you got there.
Good. That's what I'm aiming for. Yeah.
Well, that could just be your voice.
yeah.
Mate, I've been scanning over your Instagram for a while, but you've got a podcast or a show of your own that you do, the Emerson Hour. Is that with your dad?
Yeah, I just recently started doing that with my old man to get to know a bit more about him.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So my old man had a pretty long career in politics. He's still somewhat involved. Member of Parliament for a long time. And as a kid, I just didn't take much of an interest in what he was up to. To me, his work was something that took him away from spending time with us, I suppose. I'm sure I didn't conceptualize it that way as a 10-year-old, but in reflection, I guess that's what it was. But more recently, I thought, it'd be good to get to know him a little bit better and engage him on what he's interested in, because we're kind of always wanting to be engaged on what we're interested in and to be asked questions. And I thought, look, I just haven't done enough of that with him to ask him about his life and what he's done and what he's learned. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to do that.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Cheers, man. Yeah.
Do you have kids of your own?
Yeah. So that was part of the impetus. We have a 5-month-old. So one kid born earlier in the year.
Congratulations.
Cheers, man.
I've got a little, my first child was born, Leo he's almost a year and a half now.
Really nice.
Yeah. So I guess, probably like he was born in early Jan. I'm guessing maybe a year before yours.
Mm-hmm. 4th of Jan is Sebastian's birthday.
Right on. Yeah, cool. Leo's is the 5th.
Okay. Yep. Solid.
Yeah. But it's funny how you start to view things, particularly about your parents, once you have your own kids, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, well, I'm just a normal bloke trying to figure things out, and he was the same. So empathy. It's empathy, right?
Yeah, I guess it is. Mm. Is Canberra, where you're from? I'm guessing you grew up there.
Yeah. Yep. Most of the time. We grew up in Brisbane until we moved here when I was 9.
Okay. Is Canberra are there a lot of families there who are involved in politics? I mean, maybe a silly question, but is that a huge part of the population there?
Yeah, I think so. And my sense is that people are more, they're following what's going on, the kind of soap opera of politics. They're following what's going on and they're interested. And often you can start conversations on that with that topic in mind, and it goes somewhere. But like everywhere, the people are plenty disinterested as well. And actually, that was part of the other part of the desire to have some conversations with my old man is I feel like there's change that can be made in politics through politics, and people just aren't really interested, especially young people. I think as in general, don't really view it as a realm where they can have much of a say. It's like this external thing that they have no control over that affects their lives more or less. And, in the last couple of years, it's affected our lives more, right? Political decisions that have been made. And that was part of it as well. It's like, well, let's have a look at this and try to understand a little more, see if there's any positive change that could happen there. Just get interested, get engaged on that front.
Yeah, I guess it has been something that's, I'm getting older, so I feel like there's a natural inclination towards an interest in politics somewhat. But yeah, like you said, there have been some events in recent years that have made us pay attention more.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating one. I find it somewhat confusing and a little bit of a disappointing realm at times.
Yeah,
But the more of an insight that you can gain into it, the more you can kind of attach to what's actually happening there.
I agree. Disappointment's a word that comes to mind for me as well. And I just want to understand, why is that? You know, but we can be disappointed in institutions and political institutions and companies and all sorts of things. And there's people behind everything, right? So for me, it's getting to understand, well, what's motivating those people, and why aren't things unfolding the way they could, and how could things be better? And that always comes back to, we like to put the blame on the institutions, on the big anonymous entities, but it always comes back to people behind it, and people struggling through and making mistakes, and being embarrassed and ashamed, and not really knowing themselves as well as they might, and so on and so on. So that's something I always try to come back to, something I'm always interested in, and what's the person behind what's going on, and how's that affecting what's going on, right, for all of us.
Now, man, can you give me a little background on your, like, tell me about your gym Praxis for folks who are listening. You're down in the ACT, which is the capital of our country, a few hours south of Sydney, where we are. You've got a killer little gym down there named Praxis. I've never been, but I hear a lot of great things about it. We have mutual friend Marco, who was training with you, from what I understand, and coaching there, maybe. But you know, he speaks very highly of you, and he was hanging out with us for a very long time. I think he's talking about coming back to the gym. We haven't seen him for a bit since he crossed the bridge. But have these mutual friends. I know some of the guys have been coming down doing your coaching courses. Like, there's a really nice kind of connection there, but we've never actually crossed paths.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little background on what your sort of day-to-day looks like? You've got the gym, you've got the little one, your movement practice, the whole sort of spectrum.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Praxis, we opened almost 5 years ago now, 4.5 years, something like that. Started off in a smaller space where Marco happened to be in Canberra at that time. He just moved back, and yeah, it was a nice synchronicity. You know, worked together for a little while there at the start when we were opening up, and he was running classes, and yeah, it was awesome. So we were really disappointed when he left. So we were there for a couple of years, and basically did the most minimal fit out we could manage. Just went bare bones, make it functional. Don't invest too much. 2-year lease. Let's see if this is something that has legs and something that we could take beyond or extend the initial lease. I wasn't really sure how it's going to unfold. And then after 2 years, things were looking good. So we moved into a nicer area, a larger space, twice the size. So we're 200 square meters now, when we're 100 square meters back then. Relative to, you know, some of the warehouse gyms, it's still pretty small, but it's in an area where you pay a lot per square meter. So it's big for us. It feels big. And we've been there for almost 3 years here in Campbell, which is where I live as well.
Campbell's the name of the suburb?
That's right. Yeah, pretty close to the city.
Okay.
Yeah, 10-minute walk from the CBD. 30-second walk from my house. So that was by design. We moved to be close to the studio, and I was close to the original studio. I lived about a 5-minute walk away. Because a big part of it all for me, man, is what's your life look like? You know, we can have all these visions and ambitions for the future. And of course, I had that when I started and still have that now. But it's like, what's the day-to-day gonna be like? And I want to be able to go to and from the gym, come home, spend time with the family. Obviously, there's work to do, always doing work at home, but I don't want to be commuting an hour each way, which doesn't happen in Canberra anyway. But, you know, even 20 minutes each way, 30 minutes each way, you do that a couple of times a day. If you're doing morning and evening classes, it adds up. So I spend my time all pretty much in the same place, the same suburb, more or less. A bit of teaching in the morning. Yeah, it's good, man. I like it. Drive the car once or twice a week, and mostly spend time on foot. Yeah, but I teach in the morning, most mornings, teach a class, do a bit of training after that, spend a couple hours on my practice, and then get home and get into the running of the business stuff, you know, responding to emails, all the stuff that you got to do behind the scenes. And also a fair bit of my coaching. In fact, the majority of the coaching that I do is online, as it happens, with one-on-one work. So essentially online coaching. Most of the people who are doing that are actually in Canberra, so they're doing classes as well, but they're getting programming from me and ongoing feedback and nudges to keep pushing forward and all that sort of stuff. I really like that style of less kind of PT. Okay, I'm here to motivate you and count your reps for you and all that sort of stuff. I know PTs do a lot more than that, but
They get water bottles for their thirsty
Water bottles
clients
as
as
well.
well.
Yeah, keep them hydrated, all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. Take photos, blah blah blah. But um, here's a plan for the next 6 weeks. Get after it. Come back to me, and really a process of genuine learning. Education, not just training. So we call that the practitioner program. So that's what I offer, and that's something that I spend a lot of time on each day, just in contact with the students and developing material and that sort of thing.
And so that's those people, they come into the gym as well. So they're proximal to you. You could see them face to face, but it's more just like you're supporting them through that online means, and then they have the face to face time at the gym.
Yeah, it varies. So some people aren't based in Canberra. We've got a couple who are interstate and a couple of others who are international. So they obviously get a little bit of a different experience. That said, those who are local, it's the same experience in terms of the coaching. So I give feedback on they film themselves doing whatever they decide to film themselves doing. I give feedback on that using a kind of voiceover process, which is great. The benefit, I think, of that for the student is they get to see themselves moving and what I'm seeing. So and you would have had this experience, I'm sure, working with coaches. They're learning how to see good movement in themselves, and they're using themselves as the model. So they're kind of coaching themselves. And then that's also a reference to something they can refer back to later, rather than if we just have our one session one-on-one in person, that's done and dusted. And maybe you don't see what it is that I'm talking about. With time, what happens is that they'll be filming themselves and reviewing and kind of seeing the things that I'm going to correct and correcting them themselves anyway. So it's a path toward making myself redundant and then really understanding principles of good movement and how to do that themselves. The people who are local, maybe they'll do half their sessions in the studio and half their sessions at home, or maybe they'll do 2 or 3 classes a week and then 3 or 4 solo sessions a week. So kind of just the structure mix it up based on what they're interested in and what they want to get after and their other obligations. We got single mothers doing the program, and then people who are working to be coaches and working as coaches, physiotherapists, yogis. There's a big spread of people that I'm working with, so it's pretty flexible.
What kind of stuff do you do in the gym? Break that down for me.
In classes,
Yeah. What sort of modalities are you guys exploring?
I kind of split the material into more preparatory practices, movement prep, I should say, where the intention there is, let's share material that we feel will be as valuable as possible in as many different domains as possible. So if you're going to play jiu-jitsu, or you're going to be a striker, or you're going to play a sport, or you just want to be able to play with your kids and not be injured and feel comfortable and feel mobile. You like hiking, but now you've got bad knees, so you can't hike as much as you used to. Whatever it is that you're into, dance, blah, 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 blah. Then we have the strength classes and the mobility classes are intended to help you do those things that you care about. Of course, if you just do that preparatory work, then you're like the guy who never left the gym, and you're jacked for no reason, and you're cultivating a lot of potential, but you're never actually expressing the potential, and so that's a limited perspective. Then we have the movement practice classes, which are intended more to express that potential and learn new movement skills. So I always describe those classes as feeling and looking more like you're at a dance class or a martial arts class or a sport, you're playing sport. It's less, if someone says, hey, why are we doing this in class today? The answer is less, well, this is a means to some other end. And it's more, you're here to learn new physical skills, express yourself physically, and explore that in a more open-minded way. Whereas the movement prep, there should pretty much always be an answer to that question. If you're there in mobility class, why are we doing this stretch? It's for this purpose. Why are we doing this upper body strength movement? It's for this purpose, and so on. And then we have a couple of other classes, handstand classes, which are pretty self-explanatory, learning the handstand. And that's a bit of both, right? Because there's preparatory work there as well, and the skill work too. And then we have a longevity class, which is a bit of a all-rounders class for people who really haven't been moving as much as they might. We end up with lots of seniors in those classes. Also because of the time of day, they're on at 10:30 in the middle of the day. And a postnatal class, which we started relatively recently too, which has been awesome.
I like the way you have the preparatory classes, and then you have the more kind of movement piece. It seems from what you just mentioned, like the it's an easier buy-in for the prep stuff because it's like, oh, gym work, body weight strength, mobility, maybe some lifting in there, I'm guessing, like stuff that people can attach to. Like, yeah, I've done a bit of fitness before, I can see the crossover.
Yep.
And then maybe the second tier or the deeper buy-in is like, all right, let me try this movement thing that looks a little bit weird from the outside, but I'm intrigued.
Exactly. That's what you get. And you also get a lot of people picking their interests, of course, based on their temperament. So you get the people who are a little bit more loosey-goosey in their lives, getting after the movement practice classes from the jump and never doing a strength class. But then maybe they'll find, oh, but when we're working on this floor work or whatever it is, I'm lacking strength, or I keep getting injured because I'm not aware of what's happening with the position of my scapula, for instance. And that might be the nudge to say, hey, well, maybe you should be getting in on some of those upper body strength classes. Or I don't have the mobility to be moving close to the floor, or when we're doing the striking mechanics work, I'm lacking the capacity to relax fully to express myself in the way I might. Let me get after some mobility classes. So obviously they're intended to complement each other, but you're always going to get the people who do handstand class for 3 years and then pluck up the courage to get into a movement practice because they become used to and familiar with what they're used to and familiar with, right?
Absolutely. What's your movement journey been? Like, where did you, well, take me back to the start. I want to know like what you did prior to getting into the movement realm. And then, with the movement piece, where is most of your inspiration from and your experience come from there?
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I played a lot of sport, and did throughout high school and college. First 15 rugby, first 11 cricket. Like I was always playing sport, and started doing standard gym training pretty early on, probably 13, 14. I was in the gym, getting after it, seeing if I could get bigger, get stronger, all this sort of stuff that young blokes do, of course. And then as I went into uni, my early 20s, I had my first kind of proper injury when I was 16. I had a back injury, lower back stress fractures, and a hip problem, and basically ended up in a position of chronic hip and lower back problems. It ended up being 7 years on reflection, but of course I didn't know that. I was in the middle of that when it was happening. And those issues were getting exacerbated by the training I was doing and weren't really getting addressed by the physiotherapy I was doing or anything else. So I had a shoulder that would constantly dislocate, and a hip, a torn labrum, bone spur on the femur. That's all still there. That stuff doesn't heal itself, but I was in a lot of pain, not comfortable. And fortunately, my older brother had come across a couple of teachers. He'd found Ido Portal's work and also Simon Takwa, who's local, fortunately for us. Well, local, he's in Australia. And I came back from, spent a little bit of time traveling toward the end of my degree, as you do. Came back from an overseas trip, and he was doing online coaching with Ido Portal, and this is start of 2015. I'd started doing a bit of hanging and some of the squatting stuff and a bit of Kit Lachlan stretching material on that trip. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is seeming to work. I had never done stretching that worked, and it was working to some extent. So this is pretty cool. And then I had a clean slate. I wanted to keep doing my gym training when I got back. You know how you probably get this, people come in and then on the side, they're also doing this other bodybuilding stuff. And you're like, oh, come on, let's just, let that go. And he was like, look, man, you got a clean slate, just hook into it. So I just started doing his program with him for like 6 months.
This was Simon or your brother?
Sorry, with my brother, who was doing Ido Portal's online coaching.
Yep.
So I started following that. Then he and I went overseas for a little bit, and I started doing, getting online coaching myself, went to my first event, started going to retreats with Simon and like really sinking my teeth into it. The next year I finished my last year of uni, my honors year. And it was like, all right, let's see what it's like when the practice is a top priority, and start doing a bit of coaching, a bit more teaching and so on. And the process went from there. So from 2015 to now, until last year, I'm training a little bit less now. As you know how it can be. I was pretty dedicated to practice, 6, 7, 8 hour days, big days of training,
Wow.
Doing the online coaching with Ido, implementing the stuff I'd been learning from Simon at those retreats. And I was just amazed that I could get out of pain, where doctors were saying you're going to have to get surgery. And but the surgery might not fix the pain anyway. You want to understand that stuff to some extent. And I couldn't believe how much potential there was there and how much I could transform myself. And I was getting into meditation at the same time. So you had learned the same lessons on that front. And so that was the impetus to start sharing it a bit more, start praxis and say, hey, who else is going to be interested in this stuff and who could benefit from it here in Canberra? So that's a bit of a lay of the land from then to now.
Do you still do online coaching with Ido?
I haven't been recently, almost the last 12 months. I just took a break. I had an Achilles injury that was preventing me from doing a lot of the things that I was interested in learning from them, from Ido's team. And, I understood, okay, this is the approach to strength development, mobility development. I got to a solid level with my handstand work. And so from there, for me, it's kind of like everything else is optional, obviously the handstand work's optional too, but like the strength and mobility, I've got tools. I understand how to cultivate those things, how to build those things. So then it's like, well, maybe I could just get into boxing myself. Maybe I could get into BJJ myself and pursue. If I want to learn a new physical skill, there are people who can teach it to me locally. And I can apply the movement perspective and some of the tools and understandings that I've developed to those things, rather than being wedded to someone else's interests, right? So Ido's online coaching is going to be in part determined by what he's become interested in and what he's engaged in. And of course, he will justify that from the movement perspective and say, well, we went too far in this direction. Now we've got to go in this direction. It's a well-rounded practice. But like I said before, with temperament, everyone's picking things based on no one's not biased. No one's unbiased, right? So I figured I've kind of earned the right to pick interest for myself. And if that's going to be in the sphere of movement, awesome. If it's not, no worries. Open things out after a long period of discipline.
That's really cool. I think that something I've always felt, not always, but in recent years, I've felt about the movement culture. And we're kind of digging into the reeds a little bit here for the less initiated. But I think most people who've seen the movement thing, who are familiar with what Ido does and whatnot. He's really dictated largely what the culture is interested in. And, you got to give him a lot of credit for that because it's brought all this great stuff to the forefront. What initially drew me to the culture is sort of not what it's about as much anymore. Like I really liked all the strength stuff. I liked the prep work, to use your kind of framing at the gym there. Body weight strength, handstands, mobility. That's what I'm interested in. I like a bit of the exploratory stuff, the improvisational stuff, but really I just like a little bit of that. Like I like to fuck around with it, so I've always been sort of a bit of a self-confessed, like, I'm not a full movement guy. I just like to dip, I like to pick and choose. And like you said, we all have our biases. But being that original point about him sort of dictating a lot of what people are interested in, it is cool to hear. Well, firstly, it's rare to hear of people within the culture who are not kind of at a loss when he's not giving them something to do. Like, you can see from what people put out there, mostly on their social media and stuff, they're just doing whatever he's saying is cool right now.
Yeah.
And and that's fine, right? We don't all have to be pioneers or have, great inspiration to try new things necessarily. But it is cool that that you're like, well, I got to a point where I sort of feel like I had reached levels of adequacy that I could then go and do my own thing elsewhere.
Yeah, and to your point, it's not a criticism of people who decide to continue on that path. Like if what you're most interested in is developing the most advanced physical skills and abilities, then spending 8 hours a day doing the online coaching is not a bad idea. You know what I mean? If that's what you want. But the question is, what do you want, right? And if I want to have a family who actually gets to see me, and I want to be involved in my son's life as he grows, then that's a different path. And if I want to be teaching in a way where we're developing material together in class and I'm not dogmatic about, well, it's either this way or you're wrong, then I need to be drawing from different sources, right? That's where it was really fortunate for me to have encountered Simon so early on, because if Ido's dogmatic, which, that's the reputation, Simon's like the complete opposite. For Simon, it's like every approach works. That's why the approaches exist. And it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about you must do this number of reps or achieve this level. He's like so open. And so the combination of them both, I think, is really powerful of both of those perspectives. It's like, yeah, there are objective standards of whether or not you move well. Like if you just come down to praxis and then someone else comes in, they've done no physical training, and we say, all right, just move, just feel the movement. It's like, well, for one, you're not going to learn much from using that approach. And two, someone who's had a practice is going to move better objectively than someone who hasn't. That said, who's defining better? There's two sides to every coin. So it's tricky. It's tricky. I just think what I respected and what I've found inspiring about Ido was he said he was the movement guy, and he was doing that. He was doing what he said, and his life clearly aligns along that axis. He's doing what he's saying he's doing. And that's so fucking rare, man. Like how many people were saying, yeah, I'm the movement guy, but actually they're eating shit, that they're not training very much. It's like, well, are you the movement guy, or it's fine to be another guy. Just choose the guy that you want to be and be that guy. So that's what it's about for me. I wanted to try that on for a while. Let me see if I can be the movement guy for a couple of years. And it was pretty cool. It was interesting. It wasn't something I wanted permanently.
Tell me about your training these days. Have you dived into any boxing or any jiu-jitsu?
A little bit. I was doing a bit of jiu-jitsu before the pandemic or the lockdowns and whatnot, and stopped when that happened, and then got into some boxing right afterward, and did probably 9 months of boxing lessons, and I came to understand a little bit of the mechanics. There are things I'd love to do, man. I just don't have the time. It's that simple. And at the moment, the trade-off's so clear that if I decide to go to jiu-jitsu class two times a week or 3 times a week, the trade-off for family time or the trade-off for investing more in building our team here and their development, it just doesn't feel justifiable in the way that it used to feel, where I was pretty much willing to trade anything off for my own practice for a few years there. So I've done a little bit of dance, a little bit of BJJ, a little bit of boxing, enough to where if I went to one of those classes now, you'd say, oh yeah, he's done a little bit of something. He'll be able to pick this up pretty quickly. I'm kind of at that level with those disciplines. Definitely not at a competitive level or anything beyond that. Yeah.
There's like an archetypal kind of dude that's thrown around in jiu-jitsu a lot, which is, in Australia at least. In America they would have their own, elsewhere in the world, but it's the dude who, it's his first jiu-jitsu class, but you didn't know that he played like high grade rugby for 15 years. And he just comes in and fucking tackles everyone and like mauls the higher belts because he understands like basic wrestling. And it's a thing. It's a real thing in jiu-jitsu because I don't know if you got into it enough to realize, but we have a thing where like wrestlers, we kind of hold wrestlers up really high because they're really athletic, really strong, really fit, and generally more so than us. And so when we might be like quite technical at jiu-jitsu, but when you face that kind of athleticism, you're like, oh my God, like I was overwhelmed by the wrestler. So in a sense, like the ex-footy player has a bit of that going on.
Right.
Tell me how.
I think I was the opposite. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go there. Tell me.
Because I'm kind of like quite cerebral, and I was interested in the movement practice. So I'd lost my competitive. So it'd be, oh, that was interesting how you just destroyed me for an entire round. Like I kind of lost that spark that I'd had.
Yep.
To go, nah, I'm going to win this. So I was almost too curious and too open to learning in a way. Well, actually, I realized, okay, this is a problem. I need to be more competitive in some of these. Sometimes when I'm rolling here, because I'm too like floppy sometimes. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting. It's an interesting piece. There's definitely like you can take, like, both approaches work in jiu-jitsu, and you can see it at the highest levels that there's the old school thing of like just go really like have the foundation, understand the basic techniques, but then apply huge force and aggression and tenacity behind it. Or there's the hyper technical, like person that never really gets out of breath, that just plays on a level that's so complex you can't even comprehend. Yeah,
That was
both.
me without the complexity,
Right.
like
Yeah.
without the skill.
I've definitely seen it too from like movement crew
Right.
when they're kind of like, oh wow, let's talk about what just happened, and it's like, no, like we just got to scrap for a bit.
Yeah. I
Oh,
probably
that's
wasn't doing, like, I was doing a couple lessons a week, so I just probably wasn't doing it enough to really, really progress. So it was, I was learning, but it was more, this is my chance to grapple a couple times a week than this is my chance to really get good at jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? So it was more kind of play for me. Like, awesome, I'm going to spend an hour where I'm not the one teaching, just get to focus on the skills and feel that, body contact, which is awesome and something we all need and crave for sure. I think that stuff's foundational. Like I said, okay, strength, mobility work, foundational. Like the fighting, dancing, that stuff's foundational too, just in a different way. But yeah, I mean, it's something I'd love to do, and I think people should do. Yeah, we'll see.
Tell me about how you see your athletic development, like the time playing rugby, and obviously you've mentioned the injuries that came along with that, potentially from the cricket as well.
Mm.
But how significant was it to your development now, having gone through all of that kind of team sport and stuff that, like you could say, oh well, rugby was fucked, like it messed my hip up and whatever. But on the whole, how do you look back at all that?
Yeah, it's such a good, well, it's a question, but it's also a good point that you're making, which is we forget the things we've done that have given us the skills and the base we've got, especially in a teaching context. I noticed that when we started playing around with ball skills in class, like just throwing tennis balls and that sort of thing, it's like, oh my God, I'm good at this stuff just because I played cricket. That's a skill set I've got I didn't realize I had. And same with when we introduced a little bit of contact in the classes, like being used to contact from rugby, knowing how to take contact and knowing when to relax as well. That sort of thing. Like, you got all these skills that you don't realize you have. Same with working on a team. Really giving yourself to the team, wanting what the team needs more than what you might feel like you need. In fact, like your needs being absorbed by the team. So there's a lot there. When I started doing the getting into the movement stuff, it's like, oh, I wish I'd done gymnastics, and I wish I'd done dance, and I wish I'd done the stuff that these people are doing. But maybe there's something missing in that culture because people didn't play enough team sports. The people who get into that. I think the movement culture is partly there for people who didn't do that much physically growing up, or didn't play those sports. You do get the people like me who played them and got injured, and there's a lot of that. Injured people getting into movement culture, getting into the movement perspective. But there's also, it's just another avenue for people who aren't physical already, who don't have a physical, aren't engaged with their physical existence already. So, would I encourage my son to play team sport? Yeah, probably. Would I encourage maybe a little bit of gymnastics or something like that on the side, a bit of solo development, some martial arts, which I never did? Yeah, probably. But more than all of that, you just want people to be engaged in what they're doing, right? So ultimately, it's whether you're a well-rounded athlete or not. It's like, I don't know how much it matters. How much is that getting in the way of having an engaged, meaningful existence? That's kind of the question at the end of the day. And maybe if you never play team sports, that is getting in the way. You are getting in your own way because you don't have that background, or if you're lacking mobility, you're lacking strength, you can't express who you could be. But it's remembering that that's at the root of it, at least for me, which was part of the reason for the shift away from, I remember I've been to a couple of the movement camps in Thailand, the week-long event. It's pretty intense, awesome events, and you want to get together with people who are passionate about something and exchanging on it and hooking in, and like, that's super inspiring. But the first one I went to, I was like, oh, I'm not one of these people. This is not, I respect these people. I want to be connected with these people. I actually admire these people and I'm inspired by them. But like, I'm not just a movement. I don't want to say just, I'm not a movement guy. Something different. And I'm not sure what that is. That's an open question.
What made you feel that way?
I wanted to have different conversations over lunch, over dinner, than just about the training. You know, um, I guess what I get excited about is, and movement can be great on this front, is when someone's so convinced they can't do something, and then they learn how to do it, or they get over that initial fear of like, yeah, but if I go down to Jungle Brothers, they're all in shape and they're all good looking, and like I've seen their Instagram and they're all strong already, and I'm overweight and I never played sports, and they've got this whole story going on, and then they come down and they're welcomed instead of being shamed for not being able to do anything, and then they discover 6 months in, holy shit, I'm one of these people. That shift in people's self-conception, that's what inspires me. That's what I get excited by. And I think the reason that I stopped, that I didn't want to be a kind of follower in that culture to the same extent as others seem to be satisfied with, was it looked to me like that's leading to stagnation in someone's self-conception, not a continual evolution, right? It was like, if you want to be like Ido, you can't be one of his students, because his whole thing was taking from different disciplines and going beyond and outside. Whereas the culture, like you said, is a bit more, it's insulated, it's staying inside to some extent, and it's evolving. Look, this could be different because I haven't been to an event in the last couple of years and I'm not as connected, so things might be different. I don't know, but this was my experience. Was I want to be around people who are opening out and transforming themselves, and I want my conception of myself to be transforming and adapting to changes in circumstances, like a pandemic, like having a child, and so on.
That's a really cool response. Yeah, I appreciate that response. I think I had a great time. I went to 2 movement camps, loved them, you know, frothed out on it, but sort of what you're saying sort of resonates with me, because it when you're in that, and that's really an event like that is kind of like the, I don't know, it's kind of like the pinnacle of, or it's almost like the greatest or richest expression of the culture, kind
Yeah,
of compressed with all these people in one area for the whole week, and it's all about the culture. Um, there's like, when you go that deep into something, you move away from other things.
mm,
And
mm.
I can speak to that these days, that I'm much less connected to it. And I think that was sort of by choice, where I'm like, oh, there's all this other great stuff. And yeah, and it's, whatever. If you choose to go down that path, you have to put blinders on to certain other things, or maybe turn your back on other things to a degree.
Definitely, man, and definitely. And back to what I was saying earlier is, what I find inspiring is people who choose what they want to do and choose how they want to be and align their lives around that. Right. That's what I found inspiring about Ito. Um, so it's just making that choice again. Like, I noticed, for instance, if I was training as much as I used to, if I was putting that much time into my practice, then when I was teaching, I wasn't cracking jokes and taking a moment to tell a funny story and, checking in with people and connecting as much as I might have, because I didn't have the energy for it. Or maybe our classes were less accessible than they could have been, because of the material we're working on. Where I was saying to myself, well, I just want to help people wherever they're at. So if you just want to help people wherever they're at, you need to reorganize your life so that you're actually doing that. At least that's the way I view it. And if I wanted to have meaningful connection with people as much of the time through the day as possible, then I can't spend the whole time training and have no energy left for those serendipitous conversations after class this morning. I'm chatting with 45 minutes with a couple of students, where 2-3 years ago it would have been like, I got to train. We don't have time for that conversation. Maybe that's the most meaningful conversation I've had with those people. So there are trade-offs. You making trade-offs, and for me, it's about being deliberate about the trade-offs you make and making the trade-offs you want to make, not an illusion of never making them. Right.
It makes me think of a conversation I had with a guy. Um, his name's Pete. He used to run he's like the original paleo guy here in
Mm-hmm.
Sydney. And he used to run this sort of cafe that was like the paleo thing, but he didn't call it that. But it was like, he brought in all this chemical free produce. He gave out free DVDs on like conspiracy theories, like fluoride and electric car things. But all of his food was like grain free, only used animal fats. It was amazing, right? Amazing food, but a really like not everyone that met him liked him because he had very hard views and was not at all backwards in being forwards. But his cafe was for a period of time was next to a CrossFit gym. And I used to know the crew at the CrossFit gym. I actually trained there for a little bit during a period. But I remember talking with Pete one day and he was like, I just don't get it, man. I don't get this CrossFit thing. He's like, you got all these people, they look amazing. They got six packs, big muscles. And he's like, and I see them at the end of the session and they're lying on the pavement, sucking in air because they've just destroyed themselves. And he's like, you're trying to look that way because you want to have sex, but you're too tired from all the training that you can't actually have sex. I don't get it. What's it about? He's like, why don't you just go and have sex? Like he was, and I'm like, Pete, I kind of see your rationale there. Like it's, there's like we're all doing it for this thing, but then this thing can detract from your ability to enjoy the actual thing, which is the life that you're in 24/7.
Right. Exactly. That's what coming back to something I said earlier on. When you're thinking about opening a gym, how you're running your business, it's like, what's my life going to look like? It's just asking that question. And what do I want it to look like? And moving toward those things, the moments where you're like, man, I just feel so engaged in this moment. Like if I'm chatting with you on the pod and we're, I don't know, we're 45 minutes in or whatever. And I'm like, oh God, what's next? Like I'm thinking about the next thing, then that's a sign I shouldn't do podcasts. This would be the last one, right?
I could just be a boring dude.
Yeah. It could be your fault. Yeah. Maybe I need to make it more specific. Don't do podcasts with Joey.
That's right.
Yeah. There's a lesson there regardless. But if I'm engaged and I'm enjoying it and I'm not looking at the clock and I'm like, I'm not thinking about anything else except what we're doing now, then that's a sign maybe I should be having more of these conversations. And so I think observing yourself and asking those questions and noticing, when do I feel the most stoked? When do I feel the most engaged? What's the most meaningful stuff I'm doing each day? How can I do a bit more of that and a bit less of the stuff that I just want to get over and get through, And it's not just following your bliss, because like someone's got to take the rubbish out. So, uphold your responsibilities as well, right? Like be a good person, do what's got to get done. But things shift and you shift and your interests shift. And there was a time for me where training every moment of the day was the most engaging, exciting thing. And that time's not now, but training 0 moments of the day is also not now. It's just recalibrating and adjusting the ratios along the way and living the life you want to lead, right?
I like that. Yeah, I really like that. Something that we observed, and I say we, this was Paul T and myself, like my two best mates. We own the Jungle Brothers together. I probably dipped my feet in the deepest into the movement realm. And so I was, sort of bringing a bit of that culture back. And the boys also did, very much in their own way, but just probably less egocentric with what they did. But something that we observed that was always kind of, I don't know, it just always seemed a bit kind of silly about the culture, which, and I don't even need to talk about all the good things that came from it, because I do that all the time. Like our business is, built on it. But the training prescription could be so high that it would force you to be isolated by yourself in a gym for hours upon hours in a day. And it's like, sometimes this is where something like team sports are really nice. Like it brings you into a group, right? It's a social thing. The movement culture is great. We get together, we have friends. I got some friends who do movement. When they're in town, we get together, we all do handstands, whatever, like jam out. But the reality is day to day, most of us are kind of, it's a bit of an insular existence, which, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with being alone, training alone. But it was always a thing that I thought, and it's strange, like also too, because the training volume was so high that you would be spending so much time by yourself.
Yeah. And look, that's one of the things I wouldn't trade for anything, was that time alone, just with yourself, struggling, and noticing just the awareness though, like noticing how do I respond when I'm struggling with a session, and making the decision in every moment, what kind of person am I going to be? I'm going to be the person who keeps pushing through, or am I going to be the person who gets frustrated and gives up on the thing? Or am I going to be, for me, the physical practice always has to, yes, it's serving your physical development, but it has to serve something else as well. And that's how I kind of reframed it for myself. Was this is a lot of, it's not meditation, but it's learning about myself through the practice. And I really valued that. But to be doing that right now just wouldn't make sense. And maybe for me, it was more doable because, it's 2.5 years, I already was opening a facility. So I had people around, had people I was sharing with, I had people I was moving with. There were other influences already from the beginning, like I mentioned with Simon. So it wasn't too insular for me. I could see someone doing the amount of training I'd done actually just alone, not being a part of a community, not ever doing any teaching, not any sharing. And yeah, it'd be a strange existence, but each to their own. If you're stoked on it, I think that's what matters, man. If you're excited about it, it's just easy to forget. It's easy to lose track of whether or not you're excited about something. Like to the CrossFit example, I feel like people do CrossFit for 1 or 2 years and it's like the best thing in the world. And then they keep doing it and then they forget. Like they're still riding on this, kind of chasing the dragon. Like they're like, yeah, but when I started, CrossFit was the best and it's still the best. But actually they've changed and now they're injured and they're like, yeah, but CrossFit. Same with diet. Someone goes vegan and you feel great for a month or two, or maybe a year or two. And then you just keep going, yeah, but I feel great. It's like, you felt great. You got to recalibrate as you're changing and the world's changing around you.
It's a great point. That podcast from Home Life ain't all it's cracked up to be, bro. Delivery guys knocking on my garage. I'm in my garage right now and I got a dude dropping off like a sofa bed.
Yeah, if you hear what sounds like a nursery rhyme tune in the background, that's my doorbell. So we didn't choose the sound. We're expecting a delivery too.
That's mad. I travel these days. We moved house when, I don't know, late last year. And I travel now between 35 to 55 minutes to and from work.
Okay. Yeah.
It's brutal. And in the afternoon, it's more like an hour because of traffic. And I'm like, oh, this fucking sucks. But, just what you said about like intentionally living where you do, making it close to the gym. I don't need to spend as much time at the gym these days, thankfully.
Right.
But I'm like, that speaks to me. That would be real nice to be able to walk to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you chuck a podcast in or what do you?
Oh, absolutely. Like like it's not
dead time.
Not at all, but there's a case for a bit of dead time would probably be good sometimes as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's more just when you're sitting in the car and you're like, I could be at home or I could be doing some work or, that
right.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good gig. If you're like if I'm at home and I'm like, oh, but I could be at the gym, then I could be at the gym, like, and be at the gym at the time that I'm thinking that.
Tell me about the transition that you've gone through from being the movement guy, the practitioner, to being the gym owner. We talk. I told you that I was interested in that because I feel like it's actually really hard to run a gym, and I think it's hard unless you sort of give yourself to it and you go, okay, well, I got to learn how to do this and I got to make this my focus. Small business is tough, no matter kind of what your approach or what you're doing. Talk to me about like some of the sticking points for you when you were going from Tom the movement guy to becoming the owner and operator of Praxis.
Yeah, look, for the first couple years, like when we had that initial lease in that smaller space, I was always like not thinking myself as a business person. I don't run a business. I wanted to do something that allowed me to keep training the amount I was and to share a bit of what I was up to, and my life at that time, like I didn't have anyone relying on me financially. Expenses were low. The space was cheap to rent, pretty cheap. So expenses there were low. And I just kind of was like, well, how long can I get away with having this thing that's not really a business, where I'm not really running a business, but that's serving me in my life and these other people's lives. And then it was after that first couple of years when we signed the second lease, moved into a larger space, sunk a lot more money into the fit out and all that sort of stuff, where I said, okay, now I'm going to have to like run the business, and I'm a pretty detail oriented person. I'm pretty meticulous. So the little things of running the business weren't hard for me. And I kind of like that. I like systems, if you don't, I reckon running a business might be a bad idea. because like there's a lot of systems you got to get your head around, and you want to be setting them up. And just I've always kind of tried to do things as simply as possible, because there's a million things you can do running a business. That's why it can be exhausting, right? Because even you're spending time with your family, yeah, but I could do something. There's always a job for you if you run the business. Even if all the work's done, there's more work that you could make up for yourself. There's more that you could be trying. So a strategy I've had from the beginning is to pick projects. Like, didn't really do any targeted marketing in the first couple years. And then I said, okay, let's take marketing seriously for 6 months and see what that's like, or we just had Marco did a little bit of work for us. We had casual teachers, and I was like, well, what if you tried to really build a team? And what if I took on the role of not just being hopefully a good teacher and a practitioner, but also a good boss, and a good leader on that front who's trying to cultivate other people, and sink my teeth into that project, while the finances and these other things you've already set up are kind of running along in the background. Because if you just try and do everything all at once from the start, it's going to be a shit show. And also for me, I always feel like if what I'm doing now feels exactly like what I was doing a year ago, then that's a problem too. So drawing in new projects, not extra projects, but just new projects along the way. And at some point we'll really do a good job of the website, but now's not the time. We'll sink our teeth into that project when the time's right. Or, you mentioned some of the teacher training stuff we've been doing recently. That's something that's been on my mind for a couple of years, but now we're thinking, okay, let's make a real project out of that. Hosting workshops, we never did that in the first couple of years. And then now it's something that we're doing frequently. So I did have to make a shift. For me, toward accepting, okay, I do run a business and I want to do a good job of it. But again, that's always nested. It's like the practice that's nested in a broader conception of like, for me, the business is something that the business gives me the life that I want and gives the people that I'm working with, my colleagues, hopefully the life that they want, and the students, the lives that they want directly, rather than the business gives me money that gives me the life I want. You see what I mean? And so when that trade-off's there and it's obvious, if you're looking for it, like I'm about to exchange the life I want for more money in the hope that that'll give me the life I want, then I try to always choose the life I want directly. You know what I mean? So maybe I should be teaching 2 classes every morning instead of 1. But maybe if I was teaching, and that would be a better business decision, and I'm sure it would be. But maybe if I was teaching 2 classes, I'd be just getting through the classes, and I wouldn't be stoked for every class like I am if I teach 1. And the people who are coming along wouldn't get the attention that they get otherwise. And maybe I wouldn't have the time for my practice, and that'd put pressure on my family and all these other ripple effects that would come about as a consequence of making a wise business move. So I'm trying to get away with that, basically. For how long can I get away with making less wise business moves or what might seem like less wise business moves in the name of having the project be an awesome project and me being stoked about it and stoked to show up at work. And when I'm done work, I feel better than when I started rather than worse. And everyone has that engagement, that experience of praxis. Hopefully, that's what I'm aiming at.
That's very cool. It's a very thoughtful approach to how you set your business up, which I would, I can look back and think, oh, fuck yeah, there's a lot of things that I've done in business that just didn't have very much more driven towards like self-sacrifice in order to achieve an end. And there's good things that come about from that too. But I do agree that if you're doing this thing every day and you're doing it for the long term, then it's really in your best interest to try and enjoy it.
That's it, man. And I don't mean like my life's just great and easy breezy. It's like, if someone's sick, I'm covering the class probably. Although we've got another Tom Short, who's always up for covering a class. So he's a legend, but
second Tom,
one of many Toms.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a Tom Center, free membership if you're Tom. But so it's not about not working hard. It's not that. It's just like, this, you have a goal, probably you open your gym for the first time and your goal is just, mate, let's make this survive. Like, let's break even, can we actually do this? And then you achieve that goal. And it's like, oh, maybe we could make profit, or maybe we could grow the membership to 200, or maybe we could, there's always a next thing. There's always a next thing. So, so you're going to enjoy the things. Like, I kind of think of it this way. I always feel like now might be the golden days, where I'll look back and be like, oh, those were the good times. So I try to feel that way all the time. Like, oh, I'm in the good times now that I'm going to look back on. And I'm trying to replace these with better times. But still, it's like, enjoy the good times, because you're going to look back on this time and wish you had it over again. Wish you could do that again. And not get sucked into that. The next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I am always doing the next thing. Like, I'm an ambitious person and I always do want to be doing that. But not packing the schedule so tight that you're not actually there for any of it. I'm in the middle of the podcast trying to get this done, because right after this, there's something else I got to get done. And right after that, something else I got to get done, and I'm getting it done, and I'm getting it done, and getting it done. But I'm never actually here, present in the thing.
Yeah, I think the point you made about it's not like it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but it's about prioritizing energy so that you can give yourself to the things that you're doing and you can do them well.
Yeah.
And and to your point, you can enjoy them, or at least give yourself the best opportunity to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not wishing it away. Can't wait till this is over so I can get on to the next thing.
Yeah, we used to I used to say that to T and Paul. We would be like all down on the gym floor. We would all be like, someone else would be coaching. Like, this might have just been a couple of years ago before T moved up to the north of the state. But there'd be we'd have a coach running the classes, but then I'd be training with my small group. T to have his crew. They're doing some handstands. Paul would be doing some PT, and we'd be like throwing jokes around the gym and people having a laugh and a bit of banter. And I'd say, like, these are the golden years right now. Like, we're going to look back and be like, fuck, that was so cool. And whatever, we were just doing the thing. It wasn't a hugely profound experience at the time. But now that T's gone, now that Paul's running the gym, I'm no longer involved in the management of the gym. I'm not there as much. We're all like, holy shit, they really were the golden years.
Right. Yeah. That's what it is. It's like, I mean, we know this with gratitude practices in general. It's just like your orientation toward the thing. Man, things are pretty good now. And it's not a like, go easy, man. Things are good. You're all sweet. It's like, still be ambitious, still push forward. Let's see what's possible. That's what I'm excited about. And I'm sure you're the same. That's why you're not still just in the weeds running the gym. It's like, I've done that. I know what that's like. What else? What are other things like? Let me sink my teeth into those things. But yeah, just being there for it. Like, it's just so easy to let your life run past, so you get this with a little boy. I'm walking through the neighborhood. I do a couple hours a day. He's in the carrier walking around, because he sleeps like shit, but he sleeps well in that. And it's particularly old ladies, they really love doing this, but almost everyone who's got kids who are grown, they'll come up to you and they say, this is the best time. Like, don't wish it goes so quick, don't wish it away. And like, that's what old timers say about everything. Right. So you can just go, yeah. That's what they all say. Or what if you actually took that seriously and you're like, man, okay, maybe this is the best time. And maybe if I'm not paying attention and I just want him to be crawling and I just want him to be talking, and then I'm excited for him to go to school, and then I'm going to miss out on all this stuff, and I'll be another of those people 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, don't wish this time away. It goes so quick. And then someone's ignoring me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe they're right. I just try not to wish it away. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your gratitude practice, and let me give you two parts to this question. That's the first part, because it's obvious that it's something that you're very interested in. I like the way you speak of it. But here's the second part of the question: is it possible to truly enjoy each of these moments to the fullest in the present moment, or unfortunately, are we always going to look back and think, oh, fuck, I should have taken that advice on board. I should have, I should have appreciated those moments more at the time.
I don't know, man. I think we'll probably always look back and, hopefully you're looking back on every moment fondly. You're like, yeah, I could do that again. That should be the goal, right? You've lived a good life, and everything you look back on, you're like, yeah, that was pretty solid. I'd love to do that again. Friedrich Nietzsche, philosopher's got this idea of the eternal recurrence. So it's like, live every moment as if it were going to repeat itself for eternity. And so I don't want to be miserable and closed and, regretful and fearful, because maybe that's my life from this moment forward. And like, your life does unfold that way. Hey, is you're practicing whether you know it or not. And if I'm practicing openness and alertness and being engaged, and then that does unfold more and more and more. In any case, it's not that I'm enjoying every moment, it's just like, it's more catching myself when I'm not, and just checking myself a little bit. Like, and I wouldn't say I have a specific gratitude practice where I sit down and journal all the things I'm grateful for, but it's like just noticing when you're not grateful for something, or noticing when you're feeling a bit sorry for yourself, and noticing when it feels like a grind, and just being like, look, in the scheme of things, this is a pretty sweet situation. And in terms of the present, being present for me, it's like when I'm with someone else, when I'm with other people, that's where there's becomes a real priority for me. And I don't always nail it for sure. I'm absent when I should be present, but like, if you're here for me, then I'm going to be here for you. And maybe I'm here for you, but you're on your phone, but fuck it, I'm still going to be present for you, because that's magic, man. That's magical. And that's the stuff that matters, really. Everything else, I don't know. Like, it sounds so woo-woo, and I hate hearing myself talk like that, because I'm a down-to-earth person, and I like to get after it and like to have goals and all that sort of stuff. But like, nothing beats fully being present for someone else, and then fully being there for you. And if it's chucking jokes around the gym, perfect. That's what I'm talking about. Or if it's, you had a rough week, I'm here for you, we can chat about it. That's perfect too. It's just getting the richness out of all the experiences that you can get. Definitely not nailing it, but that's what I aim for.
That's very cool. It doesn't sound woo-woo at all, to be honest. I mean,
Good.
yeah, like it's quite pragmatic the way you describe it. You don't have a regular practice that you do. Like, is there a meditation piece that you do?
I meditate daily.
Yep.
In the mornings, just as a kind of, just sit in silence, notice what's running through my mind, try to create some space, and make it a bit of a touchstone for the rest of the day. Like, that's how I think about meditation. It's not about being enlightened for the 15 minutes I'm sitting there, and being in bliss for the 15 minutes I'm sitting there. It's just about reminding myself to be aware. And then definitely my experience with meditation, I hope this continues, has been, it starts with that you're a little bit aware during the meditation practice itself. And maybe you sit there for 15 minutes and you've got about 1 minute of actual present state awareness, where you're not chasing your thoughts down the rabbit hole. You're actually there. But then that becomes 2 minutes within the practice. And then it becomes, there's another moment in the day where I noticed myself, where I was fully aware and fully present. And then the day starts to you start to have more moments of present state awareness throughout the day. And then the ambition's like, can I have that in every moment? That's kind of how I view meditation practice. And it's just a reminder to start the day with like, hey, this is your ambition for today. Can you be a bit more like this throughout the day? And then next morning, fuck, I didn't manage it yesterday. All right, maybe today. Can I be a bit more present, a bit more aware of what's going on, and a bit more engaged in what's going on throughout the day? That's what meditation practice is like for me. That's what it's about for me. It's not even something I like doing, like, to be honest. There's something I make myself do, because I know if I don't do it for a week, then I start just feeling busy and everything's bleeding into the thing after it, and you're just losing the magic of day-to-day life.
How long do you sit there for?
15 minutes. 15 minutes in the morning. I'll do a 15 to 30 minute relaxation practice most afternoons, which is body scan, yoga nidra type thing, body scan, contrasting tension and relaxation, that sort of thing. I need that more on longer days, if I'm teaching into the evening. But yeah, that's what it looks like. And like I said, then trying to check in throughout the day. Am I here? Am I present? Yeah.
Talk to me about you kind of touched on this earlier in the chat, but I just wanted to ask specifically, the making movement accessible to regular people.
Mm.
And when I say regular people, it's people like us, but just those that haven't had the same experience in the movement culture. They see that you have a gym, they're looking for a fitness solution, they want to get in better shape. It looks like this place knows how to do that. Um, have you got those people like bouncing the tennis ball against the wall on session one, or are you kind of drip feeding them a little bit of stuff that's going to change their perspectives over time, while also introducing them with things that are more accessible? How do you manage that?
Mm. Yeah, that's the challenge. I think is the way I view it is the movement perspective, which is we're going to use the tools that help you move more freely, right? We're going to use whichever tools give you a better physical experience than what you're having now. And if that's Olympic weightlifting, if that's gymnastic strength training, if that's handstand practice coming from a circus background, if that's martial arts, we'll use it, right? We'll use those tools. To me, if no one had a sense of training, like if there wasn't already a fitness culture, that perspective makes complete sense. But we're kind of trapped in this other thing of, I want to look a certain way. People want to look a certain way because they want to feel a certain way, right? I mean, you probably know this. Someone who really thinks that they're attractive and carries themselves like they're physically attractive, they're more physically attractive because of that. Like it's so, if someone's really feeling themselves, you're like, yeah, there's something there.
Yeah.
So I think at the root, a lot of what we want is actually that. I want to look competent. I want to look like I could win a fight if I got in one. Well, what if you could just win a fight? You'd probably look that way anyway, right? I want to look like I could lift heavy things. I want to look like I'm not overweight. Just do those things that you actually care about. It's like getting to the root of the things. So a lot of the work, and this is the point I'm trying to get to, is just stripping away all the shit that's already there, and that starts with asking questions. Like if you come in, hey, what have you done before? What's your background? What sorts of practices have you done? I did a bit of yoga, but I really liked it. It made me feel, but I never really got more flexible. It's like, all right, this person wants to get a bit more flexible. Why'd you come? What did you see about practice? Why'd it make you come? Just connecting and trying to say, okay, what's this person after? And then taking the time I used to be way more, either it's my way or the highway. Like either you're into it or you're not. If you're not, fuck off. I just want to work with the people who want to get after it and accept me, accept my perspective. Now I'm way more open to, let me create that bridge from where you are to where you could be.
Got soft,
basically. Yeah. But like, you kind of help them articulate their needs through what they think are their wants, what they describe as their wants now. I want to lose weight. Okay. You want to lose weight. You probably feel like your weight's getting in the way of living the life you want to lead. Really, you just want to live the life you want to lead. Oh, it's making you less attractive because you don't feel confident in yourself physically. Really, you just want physical confidence. Okay, we can give you that. So strip all that shit away and then just start working at it. And give principles, okay, we're doing upper body work. If you can understand how your scapula functions, you understand upper body strength work, basically. So let's work on that and give you that understanding and build you up from there. And then you just got to, and I'm sure you do this a lot in life in general, just kind of observe and go, is this landing for this person? If it's not, let's have a little chat and see how I can connect a little bit more. Yep, you came to the movement practice class. We're doing some pretty weird shit. It's your first class. You didn't know what you were getting into. And just go up afterwards and, yeah, so that's some pretty weird shit. Just have a candid conversation. Not like either you like this or you don't, but maybe you should try out a strength class. It's going to be a bit more obvious to you why we're doing squats than why we're bouncing down the room with a tennis ball. It's come back to being present. Hey, just being there. I don't think we have a system for it. I don't know if you can have a system other than asking questions and genuinely listening. And if you come in and you said, man, I've got this back problem and it's just been bothering me. If I can connect what we're working on in class to your problem, we're doing some spinal waves. And I can say, Joe, you mentioned that back problem. This stuff can change your life if you practice it enough. You could heal yourself with these spinal waves. And we're just teaching and it's part of it. And it's just like connecting them to the project, to the material, making them feel welcome, I think is a huge part of that. Because I think of a lot of what I have to do, what I choose to do. Running the gym is reassurance. People are so afraid, man. So afraid to try something new and to fail, to be embarrassed, to, you know, and you get to think yourself, like you go into something brand new, you've got no experience. Yeah, okay, it's frightening. But if the people around you are there to lift you up, not push you back down, that can be such a shift for someone. You don't know if that might be the only thing in their life where the people around them are like, yeah, we reckon you can get stronger. We reckon you can do it. We actually believe in you. And we don't care that you can't do it yet. We're here for you, and we're here to see what you could do if you hooked into it and kept showing up. Like, what more could you want, man? That's the shit. That's the best. You got a whole group of people doing that for complete strangers. It's like, it's beautiful. I've got soft.
In a good way. Absolutely.
Hopefully.
I did the same thing when I was, I became very strict and was like, no, this is how it has to be. And this is the movement thing. And if you're not interested in this, you suck. Like,
right.
If you can't see why this is so important, then there's something wrong with you. And then, I look at where I'm at with it now, and it's a very different approach. And I'm very much more accepting of what, hey, you want to do a bit of that? Yeah, you can do a bit of that. That's cool. Like, hey, why don't you try a little bit of this? And just a more rounded view of the whole thing. I think we've always, in the same way that you described, our gym's always been extremely welcoming. But, if I look specifically at the programming in those earlier days, the programming was not particularly welcoming.
Right.
It's nice to hear, because I do think that it's so hard for us to get out of our own dogmas. And in a gym environment where people are already coming in, most of them, or at least a significant portion of them, are already pretty concerned, like pretty stressed about being there.
Right.
In amongst all these beasts that they see, which you would experience this when someone looks at your gym. They don't see the full spectrum of people that are in the room.
Right.
They see you with your top off and you're jacked, and then they see that girl and she looks jacked, and they're like, everyone here is jacked.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, no, they're not at all. But it's what stands out to us. So I always sort of, we're always often thinking about, like, how do we kind of destroy those stereotypes and make what it is that we're obviously passionate about peddling to the masses.
Right.
How do we make it accessible for them and present it in a way where, they can actually avail it to themselves?
Right. Yeah. And that can be, it's not like I don't want you to feel any discomfort on day one, but it can just be explaining. I do that quite often. This is going to be hard. What we're about to do is going to be hard. Yeah. Or you're going to get sore in this part of your body. You're going to get sore quads while we do this squat stuff or whatever. I just feel like flagging people's experience, like acknowledging they're having an experience, can make a big difference. So you want to be seen by the people that you're working with. And if it's like, oh yeah, this guy's here for me and maybe he can help me. And he reached out because he hadn't seen me in a couple of weeks, or he noticed I came back after a break, and he's like, hey, where have you been, man? It's good to see you. Good to have you back. Those little moments can make a big difference. And it's not because it's good for business. It's because, like, I do care. You do want to care about, is this person showing up or not?
That's the promise you make to them, right? When they sign up, you're like, I want this more than you want this.
Exactly. And it's not about me. It's not about me. That's what that perspective is saying. The initial perspective of, oh, we do it this way, and if you can't, you'll figure it out because I figured it out. Like, you'll have to figure it out the hard way because that's what I didn't know. It's about you. If you're operating that way, everyone's got to be like hard like me, and they got to learn the way I did. But it's not about the person who's in front of you. And you can, like we said at the beginning, you can carry yourself that way, and it's no worries. You're going to end up with a bunch of people who are really trying to be like you, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's what you want. I don't know, honestly, right? We don't really know, but something feels better if you're trying to really orient toward the person who's in front of you and take them a step forward. They came because they want something, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be there. They came because they want to move forward in a positive direction. And I just think more broadly, what if everywhere you went, people wanted you to move forward in a positive direction as well? What if we all wanted that for each other? woo woo again, maybe, but it's like,
That'd be pretty cool.
wouldn't it be cool, dude? Wouldn't it be cool? Like, so you can have your little microcosm of, we got our few hundred people who are engaged with us and people dropping in and out, and someone comes and tries it. And like, well, in my little part of the world, that's how it feels. That's the selfish side, actually, coming back to living the life you want. You know, for me, that was a big part of starting Praxis was I want to be surrounded by people who feel that way and want that for each other. And I know I want it for myself, and I know I want it for other people to feel like you're moving forward in a positive direction. So let's see if we can set up a gym and build a bit of a community where that's the norm, you know, and then that's what your world becomes. Maybe you encounter a few assholes out there, but most of the time, if you're spending a lot of time at work, at the studio or whatever, yeah, you can have that. So small change makes big change, right?
Absolutely. I got one last question I want to ask you, Tom, which is you've obviously experienced many different sort of gyms over your time. You know, not most of us, whatever, commercial gym, sports teams, facilities. I don't know, maybe maybe CrossFit, whatever. Looking at like fitness as a whole, and we can both acknowledge that like there's many and varied, and people doing different things, and that's great. What's one thing that you wish they could all do a bit better if you're looking at these places where people like your members, but instead of coming to your business, they were to go to one of these ones?
I actually think it's more of an emotional shift than, obviously I'd like to see different movements being practiced, right? That's an obvious answer. But the feeling I always had when I was in a kind of standard gym setting was everyone feels vulnerable when they're training because it's a physical, like, well, your body's the side of vulnerability for you. And when you're trying to do something, you're kind of exposing yourself physically. And if you fail at something physically, it's obvious. I tried to do that thing, I couldn't do it. You could work a cushy job and fail for years and keep the cushy job and no one would know you're doing a shitty job. You know what I mean? But physically, it's like obvious. It's right there. You're vulnerable the moment you step in and try to do something. And the feeling you get in a standard gym is like closure in response to that. You know what I mean? I'm on my phone, you're on yours. Don't look at me. We're strangers. I'm not talking to you. Oh, I might try that new exercise. I don't know how to do that. What if I fuck it up? I might try to put another kilo on that. Oh, but what if what if I fail or I'm going to be embarrassed? It's like the response to the vulnerability is to protect ourselves against it and to close ourselves off from the people around us in that space. And then you can't learn, right? Because learning is failure. So I don't know how you do it. Exactly. It's a cultural thing, but it's like, what if all those spaces you walked into, that vulnerability was embraced instead? Like a good friendship where you just open with each other and it's like, hey man, I'm struggling with this. And they say, I'm struggling with that too. And I worked through this a little while ago and this seemed to help me. And it's just like opening out in response to the vulnerability and going, yeah, I'm vulnerable. I can't do this shit, but I'm trying. I'm failing. Doesn't matter. I'm doing my best, rather than closing. If you could have that feeling in every physical training space, I mean, gyms would just be magical places, and they should be. They can be, and that's what they're set up for in theory. But it's just having people. The reason it doesn't happen, I know it's a long answer, but I think the reason it doesn't happen is that the people who are running the show, they're the trainers, or they're the receptionist at the gym, or they're the owner. They've not come to terms with their vulnerability and with being open about it themselves. So the PT's like, yeah, but I'm the good looking guy in here, and I'm jacked, and everyone's trying to be. He's kind of got his own shell on as well. So it's like a leading by doing kind of thing. You're modeling that behavior. If the leaders, the teachers, the coaches, the gym owners, if they're vulnerable and they're open about the things that they're failing at, and they're willing to try things, not knowing how it's going to unfold, then that kind of ripples out from there, I think. So that's a change, right? Embrace your vulnerability, get a bit softer, see what comes of it. Doesn't matter if you make mistakes, right?
That's a cool response, mate. I appreciate the chat today. I really like your outlook on things, and I personally take a lot away from it. But I also think it's a very it's cool for, there's going to be other people who want to do things like what you've done, who want to do things like what we've done, who, it's cool to hear about what it takes, and, I guess just some of the realities of running a business and stuff. So I think it's a really valuable conversation for us to have had.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on and asking questions and wanting to know the answer. And we could have had a very different conversation about in the weeds running the business and all that kind of surface level stuff. But I'm sure you have conversations like that, and you're already engaged on that front, and those conversations are out there. So I like these sorts of conversations.
Yeah, yeah. I think I mean, yeah. The way I tend to frame it is like, what do I want to learn from you in a
Right.
way,
Yeah,
and yeah, there's plenty of podcasts on business, right?
exactly.
But to hear the story of like, because people see your place and they're like, oh, he's obviously successful, killing it, whatever. That's great. Like, but I couldn't do that. And you're like, well, no, like it's just a guy that was into the movement thing, and then wanted to share it with others. And
Mm,
it's what it is. It's become what it is. So I
mm.
think it's a really inspirational piece. Where can people find your stuff? Is there anything, do you have any events coming up? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So you can find us at Praxis Canberra on Instagram. I'm in the list of teachers in the bio there, so you can find me as well, and our other teachers. I'm doing we've got an event. I think it's in October in Sydney with you guys.
Ah, yes,
Uh,
you are.
yeah, so I'm doing a few different expressive movement workshops. You can find those on our website. So if you head to praxis.com.au and go to upcoming events, I believe is the tab, you'll find what we're up to. We've got a men's retreat coming up, which is going to be special, and a few of those different workshops where I'm excited to share things from that perspective of like, what if your practice was geared toward making you a more full version of yourself and allowing you to express yourself freely rather than trapping you within what's already defined as beautiful and good and all those sorts of things. So jump on the website, have a look at those events, follow us online, and flick us a message if you're interested in working with us. And even if you're not, if there's questions or, hey, I'm struggling with this thing, you want to chat, we're here to serve, and I'm sure you feel the same way. So all you got to do is make that first contact. Hey,
I'll put links to all of that, to the website, to the events, and the Instagram stuff in the show notes. So for anyone listening, you can just find it there. Um, Thomas, thank you, man. I appreciate it, and I really look forward to when you do come to Sydney in October. I'd love to be in Canberra before then, but who knows what'll happen.
mm.
So at the very least, it'd be cool to connect in person when you come up to our spot.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much for having me on. Maybe we'll do another one in person when I'm there. Hey,
I think it's a must.
all right.
Good man.
Cheers, Joey.
Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, please share the episode with a friend. Send it to someone who you know would benefit from listening to it. It allows us to keep getting awesome people like Thomas on the show and keep doing the things so that you guys can listen in on these enjoyable conversations. Thank you. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.